what should I do to stay healthy? And sometimes I have people telling me, well, I already know what to eat. Well, one thing that I've discovered is that in my world, like Hippocrates said, food is your medicine. A lot of people eat food because of the taste and the looks and so forth. But when I look at food, I look at what bioactive ingredient in that food can we identify and use to decrease nutrition-related diseases and help you to feel better and to basically be better as far as your thought processes and how your body feels. You may have heard on the news and a lot of the reports that 75% or 85% of our diseases are related to our environment. And so that brings me to the point, you know, are we eating the correct foods? Are foods damaging our body, or are they helping our body? Sometimes people come into my office and they say, I already know what to eat. And I kind of look and puzzlement as far as when they tell me that. I say, well, in nutrition science, we really don't know everything that you should be eating. So, you know, if you know and we don't know, there's kind of a discrepancy there. So when I look at foods, I look at, okay, their foods contain what we call phytochemicals. Drugs that people take, they are what we call pharmaceuticals. So we've got phytochemicals versus pharmaceuticals. When you go to the doctor, he's using a pharmaceutical to help correct a disease or control a disease. Now, when you come to some nutritionists or some medical doctors, they're looking at food. What in those foods can we use to control, cure, or modify the disease that we're dealing with? For a long time, food has been studied, plants have been looked at, and they have a very, very long history. Science research tells us that there are over 700 different herbs and plants. And you may have heard your grandparents or somebody in your home, or you may know people that grow plants and they use plants for a variety of conditions. And some of those plants may include aloe vera, some may include turmeric. Turmeric is really big now. Other plants may include garlic, peppermint, thyme, sage. And so I have even started growing herbs and plants because of its medicinal purposes, characteristics. So that brings us to the point, phytochemicals. What are phytochemicals? Phytochemicals are nutrients in food beyond the vitamins and minerals. So phytochemicals is a big word that I'd like for you to remember, because that makes up the color component of the food, and those color components help the vitamins and minerals to do their jobs. So as we look at these pictures, you look at grapes. Grapes have phytochemicals, and the grapes are different than the phytochemicals in the peppers. Then you've got onions, you've got apples. So everything you eat has a phytochemical associated with it. So let us teach you a little bit more about phytochemicals, what they are. Some of the phytochemicals I will briefly talk about. I'll share some of their benefits, and at the end you can ask some more questions or you can make some comments. But when somebody comes into my office, I always say, eat the colors. If you can't remember anything that we've discussed today, just remember colors. It has to be colorful on your plate. Eat more phytochemicals. Here again, phytochemicals, syllabication. Oh, all right. So what are phytochemicals? They contain protective compounds that may help prevent diseases. And this is just a little basic way to help you to identify what phytochemicals do. You don't hear that name real often. You hear more vitamins and minerals, but you don't hear about phytochemicals. In one vegetable, there may be more than 100 phytochemicals in one serving. And so I get very concerned when I take a food history from somebody and I find out that they're eating the same food 2 or 3 days during the week. It's more important for you to have a variety, because every time you change that food, you introduce a different type of phytochemical into your body. How do phytochemicals work? Just remember, they are not vitamins, they're not minerals, and so there's no recommended daily allowance for them. They don't provide calories and they don't provide energy. So they have what we call a drug-like effect in the body that influences your body's chemistry. What can they do? And it's very important what the phytochemicals do. They may inhibit the growth of certain cancers. And so it's very important. We say that they are anti-carcinogenic. And I'll mention some of the phytochemicals that may inhibit cancer growth. My research was in nutrition and cancer, and so I focused a lot on specific foods, specific phytochemicals that inhibited cancer growth. Other duties that they perform, they may prevent plaque buildup in artery walls. I was reading an article that indicated that in hypertensive people, these phytonutrients may help decrease the plaque buildup, and they also helped to improve the integrity of the cell. So that's getting a little technical, but for the most part, if you remember just eating something that's purple or orange, then it may help decrease the plaque buildup, or what we say, we say that it helps to reduce your cholesterol. Other phytochemicals act as antioxidants. So you should get your phytochemicals from natural foods. Now, I'm going to disagree with this comment on the slide. It says not supplements. And sometimes supplements may be needed to assist in the phytochemicals that you don't get in the foods that you don't eat for whatever reason you're not eating that food. Let's look at some of the phytochemicals and their benefits. Some phytochemicals are what we call alliums, allied sulfides, and those include garlic, onions, leeks, chives, and scallions. And those are very important because they may help prevent certain cancers. If you've got high blood pressure, I run into a lot of people who take a garlic tablet. Well, the garlic is in the allyl family, and it may help to reduce some of the effects that are occurring in your vascular system. So by that means, it may help to reduce the blood pressure. It may have an anti-cancer agent in it that helps the cells resist the attack from or the changes that occur that can lead to a cancer developing. So it's important for these alliums. You know, one thing about phytochemicals is the fact that you need to introduce that into your system every day. So it's not an option to have a garlic one day or onion one day, because these phytochemicals build up in the body over time. So it's important to have to include them in your cooking every day if you can. And if you look at these examples, you know, these are, if you count them, they're about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7 different onions and garlic and leeks, different types. And a lot of times when you go to the store, you focus on one. A lot of times a person may buy this type of onion, which is a yellow onion or white onion. You may not buy a leek, but I encourage people to include all of these in their diet at some point in time. So this is something, this is a food that should be in your diet every day. Every day you should have garlic or onion, or garlic and onion. Include that in your cooking every day. Another phytochemical is called capsaicin, and capsaicin are found in hot peppers. I have quite a few people that will make a smoothie or make some type of dish where they include hot peppers. Well, the reason the hot peppers are important is because they aid in digestion and they have potential cancer-fighting compounds. Hot peppers may be a topical painkiller. I am not sure, but for some people, our research suggests that it may be beneficial. I caution with some of these phytochemicals because some people may have an allergic reaction to it. So, you know, the information that I'm giving you is general, but when someone enters into my office, I make it a lot more specific. So I will have a disclaimer here. This information is general, but when you look at the individual effects of it, there are food sensitivities that individuals do have. So you have to be careful and really be under the guidance of a physician or a nutritionist or someone to help guide you when you're including a lot of these foods. These are a variety of hot peppers, and there again, its phytochemical benefits are different than the onions. So you might include a hot pepper in a chili dish or a stir-fry dish. But the object is to include it at least weekly if you can. My favorite phytochemical are the carotenoids. I actually did my research thesis looking at the carotenoids and the impact that they had with different types of breast cancers. So with the carotenoids, these are your orange and dark green leafy vegetables, and they include the carrots, the sweet potato, the winter squash, the pumpkin, the spinach, the romaine, lettuce. And the orange color is masked by the green color, the green chlorophyll. Some orange fruits that are high in phytochemicals include apricots, mango, and cantaloupe. And these phytochemicals may help prevent cancer. What I found was that in those individuals that had a high intake of the carotenoids, when they had breast changes, but usually those breast changes were non-malignant. So I encourage people to include something orange in your diet. If you can't include it daily, at least 3 or 4 times a week. And these phytochemicals, the carotenoids, are very high in provitamin A activity. So they would help increase the amount of vitamin A in your body. And these are just examples of what the carotenoids, where the carotenoids are found. There you see the carrot, the sweet potato, the broccoli, and you've got the apricots. Now, I don't necessarily recommend canned foods. I always recommend the fresh fruits and vegetables when you can, frozen second, and canned third. And usually I like to use canned foods maybe as a backup during a disaster, say For instance, right now, you notice when you go to the grocery store, it's the canned food items that people tend to be consuming, but I prefer to recommend fresh when you can. Other phytochemicals include lycopenes, and lycopene helps to give food the red colors, and you find those in tomatoes and watermelon, and they may help prevent prostate cancer and heart disease by the way that it affects cellular changes. So these are something that you should include when you can. Now I'm going to back up a little bit. I like to promote eating fruits and vegetables when they are in season. So tomatoes are not in season right now. However, if you purchase your tomatoes when they are in season, you can always freeze them and eat them later during the year when they're not in season. Watermelon's not in season, so I wouldn't recommend going out and eating a watermelon right now because of other reasons. The watermelon that you get now may be traveling from a long place, and I don't recommend eating a food out of season simply because it's going to be stored somewhere, and anytime you store it, it's going to lose its nutrient content to some degree. So lycopenes, the tomatoes and the watermelon, it might be easier to eat those when they're in season during the summer and fall. And you see the red coloring, that's the lycopene. Other phytonutrients include lutein, and lutein is found in green leafy vegetables like spinach, kale, turnip greens, romaine, collard greens. And so we've really covered a lot of different phytochemicals, and each phytochemical has its own unique ability to affect the cells in different ways. Lutein, you hear them talk about lutein a lot with macular degeneration, which is something that affects the eyes. Lutein is also may be helpful in preventing cancer and heart disease. And some examples of foods that are high in lutein includes these varieties of lettuce. So in my category, iceberg lettuce should not be included in what you consume. There's really very, very little nutrition value in iceberg lettuce. However, if you have a red leaf lettuce or if you have a romaine lettuce, these may be, spinach is not on here, but if you can see the flowers, those flowers also contain lutein. So let me just go back a little bit. Collard greens, turnip greens, I actually recommend trying these greens when you're making a salad. You'd be surprised how different or how good you can make a salad using the greens. Another phytochemical is called ellagic acid, and it's found in grapes, strawberries, cranberries, blackberries, raspberries, nuts. And actually, one of the doctors that I used to work with, he did a study looking at ellagic acid and how it may help prevent cancer. And so the berries are very, very good in possibly preventing or reducing the response or the growth of cancer cells. And so there's a lot of research now in this area looking at raspberries, particularly his research looked at raspberries and its ability to slow down cancer growth, cell growth. Here are the pomegranates, the strawberries, the blueberries. So I recommend, you know, we're familiar with the strawberries. Strawberry season is usually in May, June, especially here in Georgia. However, you've got pomegranates, and those are in the winter months, and then blueberries again in the summer. So if you're eating your fruits and vegetables in season, you will consume all of these on this slide. However, different times of the year. Another phytochemical is called the isoflavones. And your isoflavones are your soybeans and soy protein. And these may help reduce cholesterol, heart disease, and cancer. Now, there's a little controversy about the soybeans. I have some clients say that because I've got thyroid disease, then I have been told I shouldn't eat soybeans because they may make my thyroid disease worse, or they may interfere with the medications that I'm taking. So with the soybeans and the soy protein, there again, each of these phytochemicals depends on what's going on in your body. When someone comes to my office, they have to bring their medical history, the medical records, so that I can have a look at what's going on in their body, whether or not the thyroid is working okay, or if the pancreas. So I look at all your systems to see whether or not the foods that I'm recommending, the phytochemicals that I'm recommending, can be beneficial. So I caution you with the soybeans, if you've got a medical condition, you need to have whoever you're working with, your physician or your nutritionist, be aware that you do have a medical condition where the soybeans may not be the best phytochemical for you, or you may have to control the amount of the soybeans that you eat. Here's a slide that shows the different varieties of soy products and how you can include these products in your recipe or make it a part of your menu. So you've got tofu, you've got a variety of milk alternatives, you've got soy milk, you've got soy flour. I actually use soy flour if I'm making bread that's a gluten-free bread. So you've got a lot of different soy products to choose from. Another phytochemical is called quercetin, and quercetin is found in onions, kale, broccoli, red grapes, cherries, apples, cereals, tea, red wine. And quercetin came to our attention because of its ability to protect from cancer. It also may be protective in heart disease, and it may help with allergies because quercetin works almost like an antihistamine. And so, you know, you can see that a lot of these foods appear on the list several different times because, for instance, kale, some of the red grapes, I've seen them on the slide several times. So the phytochemicals are beneficial for cancer or heart disease, and it's important to include them because of the variety of phytochemicals that they have. So here's your apple, there's your onion again, and we saw onion. We saw onion when we were looking at the alums. So resveratrol is one of my favorite phytochemicals, and the reason resveratrol is so important, and you find resveratrol in grapes, and juice, red wine, and peanuts because of its ability to decrease blood clotting. And also resveratrol has also been shown to help with dementia or Alzheimer's, and also with cancer. Actually, I gave one of my animals, I had an animal that was almost 16 years old, and I gave her resveratrol to help with her dementia. And it was very, very helpful. So the reason we recommend the grapes and the red juice and the red wine is because of the resveratrol. Other phytochemicals and their benefits include sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is found in broccoli and other cruciferous vegetables. And broccoli and cabbage is another cruciferous vegetable, and it may be helpful in preventing cancer. Here's broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. So these are all what we call cruciferous vegetables. Beets, looks like kale or something in the green family, Brussels sprouts. So, and this is a type of lettuce. So you see, I think I see radish in this group as well. So here's a, looks like I passed the slide. Okay. So this slide says, honey, do you know the answer? Okay. So this is just a test as we come towards the end. We still have a little bit more time. So fruits and what are rich in phytochemicals? And I will just ask you to fill in the blank, fruits and what you fill in the blank for me. Vegetables. Fruit and vegetables are rich in phytochemicals. The next answer is, what is a fancy name for a plant chemical? Phytochemical. So, and I've talked about phytochemicals the whole time. What's a fancy name for a plant? It's called a phytochemical. This popular green vegetable is said to resemble trees by its shape. It contains sulforaphane, and it's a chemical that may help prevent cancer. Well, the answer to that, what looks like a tree? It's the broccoli. Number 4, these vegetables are really fruits. They're used to make ketchup and contain lycopene, a phytochemical name that may help prevent prostate cancer. And that phytochemical, that vegetable is called tomatoes. Number 5, this berry is named for its color and contains a significant amount of antioxidants. I think it's blueberries. Get more phytochemicals in your diet. And I think I'm coming. Okay. The WHO study group on diet, nutrition, and prevention of communicable diseases recommends that we consume at least 400 grams of fruits and vegetables a day. My pyramid recommends 4.5 cups of fruits and vegetables for most people each day. In my observation of the people that I work with, and most studies indicate that less than 25% of Americans consume the amount of fruits and vegetables that's needed daily to help keep them healthy or prevent diseases. How can we eat more phytonutrients, phytochemicals? Plan your meals around plant-based foods. And I think you may have heard, if you've been on this 30-day program, you may have heard presenters talk about a variety of meal plans or menus or recipes. So I usually recommend fruit and vegetable being the primary source of your nutrition. So everything that I recommend usually centers around a plant-based diet. Use beans and soy for your protein more often. In America, we tend to use animal-based protein source, and we forget about the beans, and we forget about the opportunity to use soy in America. But here you've got a baked potato, and instead of putting a meat on that baked potato, you can also use your beans, and you can also use soy to give you the protein source for the baked potato. Another thing I would add to that baked potato to increase the phytonutrients would be something green. Because when I look at food plates, and one thing I do when someone's coming into my office and working with me, I always have them send me pictures of what they're eating so that I can see how balanced it is and how they're using their phytochemicals. So I would add a phytochemical that's a lutein or a green phytochemical to this baked potato. Eat more phytos. Eat 2 to 3 vegetables at both lunch and dinner. Choose vegetables with a lot of color. So in my world, a sandwich is not considered a lunch, because that sandwich, unless that sandwich has vegetables included, or you're using vegetables to sandwich in whatever the protein source is. So bread or grains would not be advantageous to helping your body to protect it from disease or any other type of insult that it may encounter. So therefore, I recommend vegetables at both lunch and dinner. Choose fruits for snacks rather than pretzels and other refined snacks. Refined foods do not have phytochemicals in them, so a refined food is not going to be very advantageous if you're trying to protect your body against hypertension or against diabetes or cancers or some of the other diseases that you encounter. Season your food not with salt and pepper only, but try to season your food using garlic, onion, tomatoes, peppers, a small amount of nuts. Use seeds, because these all have phytochemicals, phytonutrients that will help protect the body. Experiment with a variety of whole grains, and some of those grains can include amaranth, quinoa, brown rice. There's a rice that I use. It's called a black rice and a purple rice. So there's a whole list of grains that you can include in your diet that are not traditional American grains. And I ask my clients to think outside of the box. When you're thinking of some of these other grains, including these other grains in your diet, they might be very different. So you need to be open to trying something different. Amaranth is a grain that's similar to me, it's similar to brown rice. It's kind of chewy. It's more difficult to chew. It's not like white rice, but it's very, very high in phytonutrients. So as I come to the conclusion of the slides, what are phytochemicals? Hopefully you can answer that. What are some of the benefits of the phytochemicals? And more than anything, eat more phytochemicals. To fail is not an option. So when people say, I don't know what to eat, I don't really understand what they're saying to me. I think I've come to the conclusion that maybe they're saying, I'm not willing to try something new. I'm afraid to try something new, because there are over 1,000 different foods that you can include in your diet. But whether or not you're willing to go outside of the box and try something new is my question. And I only challenge people to think of food as medicine, because you wouldn't think twice if your doctor write your prescription for medication to help you with your hypertension, or medication for to help reduce your cholesterol, or medication to help balance your blood glucose levels. However, when I write a food prescription, I get a lot of resistance, and the resistance is communicated in the sentence that says, I don't like that food. Well, in my world, you're saying to me that you don't want that food to help reduce your cholesterol or help control your blood pressure? You know, why aren't you willing to try this food? If you want to learn how to eat better, or if you want to minimize your disease. So this slide says, to fail is not an option. I just ended up the slides. So if I can get back to the slideshow, let's see if I can get back to the slideshow. So to fail is not an option. Trying something new, trying a new food, trying to include new spices. And finally, the final slide, as we go through the slides, sorry about that. Here we're back. This guy started cycling after age 50, and he rode 783 miles and he finished. I started ballroom dancing after the age of 50, and I completed my competition this January with my coach in a dance competition. So I challenge the listeners to try to include something different and something new, whether it's a new food, a new idea of creating a recipe, or if it's exercise. So try something new, be open to new changes. And if you've got any questions, that's it. And thank you for listening.
Well, Chandra, that was so informative. I learned so much. So I'm glad that we have this recorded, because we can actually go back and gather that valuable information. So thank you for that. One thing that I gathered is the limits that we have by just not having knowledge. So you have this body, you have these fruits, but you just don't know. And the limit in the knowledge almost seems like one of the causes of the sickness is just not knowing what to use. So thank you for that information. I'm going to open up with a question, and then I'm going to ask anyone else that has questions. You can either send a chat, or you can unmute your mic, and we'll take you one at a time. So the first question that I have is, some of the fruits that you mentioned, or the vegetables that are phytochemicals, is there any topical use for any of these items where they can still, because for example, yesterday, the topic of soursop came up, and it was mentioned that soursop can be used topically, it can be used on your skin. So is there any topical use, or the only ingestion?
No. It is, the phytochemicals also include the topical use, and research shows that when we look at phytochemicals, they have been used for hundreds, thousands of years. So it goes all the way back to the all the way back to thousands of years ago. And I was just trying to find, I had a slide, but it did not, I didn't show that slide. So in the beginning, it has a long history. So that history included the Middle Paleolithic age. And during that time and after that, plants were infused and they made herbal teas. Then they made tinctures. And the tinctures were alcoholic extracts and boiled extracts and syrups. And then they were applied as balms or essential oils. So plants have been used for thousands of years to help the body. So that's a very, very good, very, very good question.
Thank you.
So you can use them. I only caution people when you're putting some of them on the skin, just be sure that you don't have an allergic reaction, because some people are very hypersensitive to some of these phytochemicals.
Thank you for that. And when you think of things like sangrias, when you can cut up fruit and drink that, I guess if they make it with an alcoholic twist, does that take away the quality of what you're getting with the fruits if you mix it with an alcohol?
Okay, if you're ingesting it,
Yes.
Well, there again, each component is different. So for instance, if it is combined, if a phytonutrient is combined with the alcohol and the body is having a different challenge with denaturing or digesting the alcohol, then that person may have a problem. But generally because alcohols are digested a little bit differently, more like a fat. So if a person has a problem digesting the fat, then they may have a problem digesting the alcohol. But so there again, I look at it individually, because everything you eat starts a chain reaction in the body. And it's taxing the liver. So in moderation, we always say moderation. In moderation, it's not a problem. But in excess, then you're going to have the liver working not only on that alcohol, but say, for instance, you've taken other medications. So it's really going to be working overtime. But in moderation, you should be fine.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to open up the panel for anyone else. You can unmute and ask any question you have for Chandra. Okay, go ahead, Noggin Sprouts.
Oh, sorry. Hi, thank you for your presentation. I have just one question.
Okay.
The phytochemicals, phytonutrients, are they still potent in non-organic fruits and vegetables?
That's a good question. In the non-organic, and I didn't mention this, with the non-organic, I don't know if you're talking more about the genetically modified and the non-organic, because that may be a little bit different. I do have concerns about the genetically modified plants. And a large portion in the United States of our seeds have already been genetically modified. So in doing that, you do have, you are altering the structure of the plant by genetically modifying it, meaning that you may be increasing a particular chemical or decreasing it. So, and we don't get that specific as far as identifying now what's genetically modified. But for instance, I know probably 90% of the 98% of the potatoes that you buy, the white potatoes, are genetically modified.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. That's a very, very good question. And I do encourage people, there are groups that are challenging the science community to let us know what's genetically modified, so we can make a choice as to whether or not we want to eat that food or not.
Yeah, it makes you think twice when you start picking up all these vegetables in the store because
Yeah.
number one, yeah, they don't have the labels. And then you have to look, they say with the scans and you look at the numbers and try to figure it out. So after a while, it's like, okay, what am I going to eat?
I know it is very challenging. However, if a client is coming in and their body is saying that I don't know what's going on, I'm hypersensitive, I got a lot of diseases, there's a lot going on, those are the clients that I will say to them, we need to focus on non-genetic, non-GMO, because I don't know what's going on, but we got to cool it down. So let's find some foods that are not modified for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, excellent. Does anyone else have a question for Chandra on the presentation? Okay, well, I have a question.
Quick question. Sorry.
Oh, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Shonda, earlier when you mentioned, this is Rafaela, when you mentioned foods like fruits in season, right? Certain color, like for tomatoes, for example. Let's say that particular vegetable or fruit is not in season. I guess it's a two-part question. Do all the colors of fruits and vegetables share the same nutrients? And if so, if, for example, if tomato is not in season, can we replace it with something else that's in season that has the same color, that shares the same nutrient?
Yes, you can. Yes. And there again, the seasons differ depending on the part of the country you're in. So for instance, the West Coast and the North have different seasonal growing periods. And usually you can find a food that has the phytochemical in that group in every season. So for instance, if it's winter time and you need something that's high in lutein or lycopene, then I'm going to look for what's growing in season in that region. So it might be, for instance, here in our region in the South, it would be the, it wouldn't be the tomatoes, but it might be the pomegranate.
Got it.
Okay, so you can find something. It might not be what you like. If you're looking for something orange or yellow, it would be your winter squash. It wouldn't be the cantaloupe. So, and that's what I do. I look to see which foods or plants are prevalent during that season.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, wonderful. All right, I have another question. Unless someone else has a question, try to leave it open for you guys, but I have all kinds of questions.
Okay.
You guys want some of these questions? Jump in. Other than that, go ahead and ask Chandra. Oh, I see a question. You're lucky you asked that question. Okay, grow your own. Okay. All right, so the next question I have is, there's this discussion about chakras and the various chakras from the root to the crown. And one thought that I had was the connection between the chakras and the colors of the food. The same color of the food may in some way impact the chakras. Do you have any information that supports or dispels that theory? For example, the heart chakra, they say, is green in color as far as a representation. Are more green foods good for the heart? Et cetera, et cetera. Do you have any theoretical?
That is a very, very good question. I am not as familiar about the chakras. I have a sister that is a yoga instructor. And so she was just explaining that to me. I would have to do research, and I'm the type of person that if there's a theory, there's an idea, I'm gonna monitor it over time to see what kind of response I'm getting. Okay. So it may or may not be, I don't know. I am just, one thing about nutrition, we're learning things every single day. I was reading an article just last night that suggests that hypertension it might be some type of response that the body is making in the vascular system. And that response occurs very, very early before you see hypertension. Whether it is an immune response, I am not sure. So in saying that, there's a lot that's going on in the body that's brand new to us in the science field. So as we learn, we study it and see what happens, whether we use food or drugs. You know, the idea is to see if we can impact whatever changes are occurring. So if there's something going on in the heart, there's a lot of different changes that could be occurring. It could be the vessels getting constricted. It could be the cellular structure getting thicker. And my question is, can food have an impact early on? Because we need to stop it early,
Right.
So that we don't get the disease at the end.
I agree. The only downside is that, you know, we have but so much control. So when we look at, for example, growing your own food, the environment, for example, if things are being sprayed in the air and it's ending up in the soil, yeah, you might be planting your own food, but is your food still affected by the quality of the soil?
That is true. Now, because my background is food science, I just ordered a meter that tests the soil.
Right.
Everybody doesn't go to that degree, because you can test your soil and find out what the pH is in the soil. But you know, there again, I am growing my own food. So I use raised beds and I use my own fertilizer. I talk with old farmers from the old age. So you do have to be very careful. But can you go to these board meetings? Can you have an impact in the community to speak out against, you know, contamination of the soil? So you have to decide what you want to do as an individual to have some kind of impact on what's happening in your area. I'm an active kind of person, and I kind of speak up when I see something, you know, going on that I don't agree with.
I agree. Okay. Anyone else have a question? If not, I have one more. Okay. My other question is, food and blood type is one of the things that come up to say that your blood type should also mirror your diet. So based on your experience, some of the foods that you mentioned may not jive with someone's blood type. Do you believe that anyone should be able to use the fruits and vegetables and get the same effect, or is the effect determined by your blood type and just certain things are just not good for certain people?
You know, the new thing that's going to overshadow the blood type was, you know, kind of trendy maybe, I don't know, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. But I think where we're going now is genome type,
Mm-hmm.
genetic testing. And genetic testing is going to be the wave of the future. I don't know where it's going to go or how we're going to implement it, but insurance companies are already talking about genetic testing. Genetic testing will tell you a little bit more about your DNA, RNA, and your propensity to disease.
Based on your genetics.
Based on your genetics. I think that's where we're going. How far off we are, I'm not sure. But they're already genetic testing in some areas. So I think that's going to overshadow the blood type.
And when you say genetic testing, we're talking about checking your DNA.
Yeah.
So, but the only downside of that, you know, you want to know this information. It's just whose hands does your DNA fall into? So
yes,
if there's a private way of knowing this information and getting this data, I see that makes perfect sense. But when your information is in a database and being used in ways that are not kosher, I think that's the only downside. Um,
I just know, just from what I'm hearing in the medical community, I think that's where we're going to go.
yeah, mandatory DNA.
Well,
That-
it's right now it's voluntary, and I have some clients whose companies have already required it. That's voluntary, but I just think that's where we're going to go. That's why I tell people it's important for you to take control of your health, because what I'm seeing in the health community with how expensive healthcare is, it's going to be controlled in ways that you may not want it to be controlled.
I agree. And even if, and this is just, you know, theoretically, as they're gathering DNA through these mandatory COVID-19 tests and any other strategy, it's like that information will be available maybe for their use, but
Yes.
I don't know if it will be available for our use.
Yes, and it's already happening. So if the take-home message to the listeners will be, listen about these phytochemicals. You can control to some degree what's going on in your body. The thing about the phytochemicals, they have to be eaten every day over a long period of time. You can't just have a good day and then the rest of the time you eat junk food. That's not going to work. It should be consistent, and it should be long term.
Definitely agree. If we can, we'd love to have you back again. I know that time is valuable, time is definitely money, but there's so many questions. In the future, we hope to have some workshops and we can talk about that. But I think that the knowledge saved lives, and so we appreciate you taking the time. I'm going to go ahead and cue up the screen so we can share some additional information. If you can, Sandra, if you can end your screen share.
Okay.
I can start and just
Okay.
want the information. They need to get in touch with you and get their life in order. So hold on for 1 second. I'm going to share that. Hold on. All right, everyone. So this is Chandra's information. Let me just get right to it.
There you go.
And she could be found at nutritioninthenow.com. And her phone number is 770-389-0836. I'm sure she can do a consult with you, and go to her website, gather whatever information you like, and be blessed and be healthy. And we will see you all tomorrow for the 17th day of the 30-day redemption. This has been great. And Chandra, thank you again for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.